Hello, listeners, and welcome back to our channel. I'm Storyteller. So, I hope that all of you are doing great and all of you are eager to learn something new. That's why today I am here with our new story. Aladdin Part 9. We have already covered our previous part in our previous videos. So now let's start with our Part 9. But before moving towards our story, if you like my voice or like this story, so please do subscribe to our channel. So now let's move towards it. The genie immediately disappeared. Aladdin went out of the hall and returning soon after found the window as he wished it to be like the others. In the meantime, the jewelers and goldsmiths repaired to the palace and were introduced into the Sultan's presence, where the chief jeweler presented the precious stones which he had brought back. The Sultan asked them if Aladdin had given them any reason for so doing, and they answering that he had given them none of, he ordered a horse to be brought, which he mounted and rode to his son-in-law's palace, with some few attendants on foot, to inquire why he had ordered the completion of the window to be stopped. Aladdin met him at the gate and, without giving any reply to his inquiries, conducted him to the grand saloon, where the Sultan, to his great surprise, found that the window, which was left imperfect, corresponded exactly with the others. He fancied at first that he was mistaken and examined the two windows on each side, and afterward all the 24, but when he was convinced that the window which several workmen had been so long about was finished in so short a time, he embraced Aladdin and kissed him between his eyes. "My son," said he, "what a man you are to do such surprising things always in the twinkling of an eye. There is not your fellow in the world. The more I know, the more I admire you." The Sultan returned to the palace and after this went frequently to the window to contemplate and admire the wonderful palace of his son-in-law. Aladdin did not confine himself in his palace, but went with much state, sometimes to one mosque and sometimes to another, to prayers or to visit the Grand Vizier or the principal lords of the court. Every time he went out, he caused two slaves who walked by the side of his horse to throw handfuls of money among the people as he passed through the streets and squares. This generosity gained him the love and blessings of the people, and it was common for them to swear by his hand. Thus, Aladdin, while he paid all respect to the Sultan, won his affable behavior, liberality, the affection of the people. Aladdin had conducted himself in this manner several years, when the African magician, who had for some years dismissed him from his recollection, determined to inform himself with certainty whether he perished as he supposed in the subterranean cave or not. After he had resorted to a long course of magic ceremonies, and had formed a horoscope by which to ascertain Aladdin's fate. What was his surprise to find the appearances to declare that Aladdin, instead of dying in the cave, had made his escape and was living in royal splendor by the aid of the genie of the wonderful lamp. On the very next day, the magician set out and travelled with the utmost haste to the capital of China, where on his arrival he took up his lodgings in a khan. He then quickly learned about the wealth, charities, happiness, and splendid palace of Prince Aladdin. Directly he saw the wonderful fabric. He knew that none but the genies, the slaves of the lamp, could have performed such wonders, and piqued to the quick at Aladdin's high estate, he returned to the Khan. On his return, he had recourse to an operation of geomancy to find out where the lamp was, whether Aladdin carried it about with him or where he left it. The result of this consultation informed him to his great joy that the lamp was in the palace. Well, said he, rubbing his hands in glee, I shall have the lamp, and I shall make Aladdin return to his original mean condition. The next day, the magician learned from the chief superintendent of the Khan, where he lodged, that Aladdin had gone on a hunting expedition, which was to last for 8 days, of which only 3 had expired. The magician wanted to know no more. He resolved at once on his plans. He went to a coppersmith and asked for a dozen copper lamps. The master of the shop told him he had not so many by him, but if he could have patience till the next day, he would have them ready. The magician appointed his time and desired him to take care that they should be handsome and well polished. The next day, the magician called for the 12 lamps, paid the man his full price, put them into a basket hanging on his arm, and went directly to Aladdin's palace. As he approached, he began crying, Who will exchange old lamps for new? And as he went along, a crowd of children collected who hooted and thought him, as did all who chanced to be passing by, a madman or a fool, to offer to exchange new lamps for old. The African magician regarded not their scoffs, hootings, or all they could say to him, but still continued crying, Who will exchange old lamps for new? He repeated this so often, walking backward and forward in front of the palace, that the princess, who was then in the hall of the 24 windows, hearing a man crying something and seeing a great mob crowding about him, sent one of her women slaves to know what he cried. The slave returned laughing so heartily that the princess rebuked her. Madam, answered the slave, laughing still, who can forbear laughing to see an old man with a basket on his arm full of fine new lamps, asking to exchange them for old ones. The children and mob crowding about him so that he can hardly stir, make all the noise they can in derision of him. Another female slave, hearing this, said, "Now you speak of lamps. I know not whether the princess may have observed it, but there is an old one upon a shelf of the Prince Aladdin's robing room, and whoever owns it will be not sorry to find a new one in its stead. If the princess chooses, she may have the pleasure of trying if this old man is so silly as to give a new lamp for an old one without taking anything for the exchange." The princess, who knew not the value of the lamp and the interest that Aladdin had to keep it safe, entered into the pleasantry and commanded a slave to take it and make the exchange. The slave obeyed, went out of the hall, and no sooner got to the palace gates than he saw the African magician, called to him, and showing him the old lamp, said, "Give me a new lamp for this." The magician never doubted, but this was the lamp he wanted. There could be no other such in this palace, where every utensil was gold or silver. He snatched it eagerly out of the slave's hand and, thrusting it as far as he could into his breast, offered him his basket and bade him choose which he liked best. The slave picked out one and carried it to the princess, but the change was no sooner made than the place rang with the shouts of the children, deriding the magician's folly. The African magician stayed no longer near the palace, nor cried any more, "New lamps for old," but made the best of his way to his khan. His end was answered, and by his silence he got rid of the children and the mob. As soon as he was out of sight of the two palaces, he hastened down the least frequented street, having no more occasion for his lamps or basket. He sat all down in a spot where nobody saw him. Then, going down another street or two, he walked till he came to one of the city gates, and pursuing his way through the suburbs, which were very extensive, at length he reached a lonely spot where he stopped till the darkness of the night, as the most suitable time for the design he had in contemplation. So, because this story is too long, so rest of the part of this story we will cover in our next part, part 10. Till then, stay tuned with us. I hope that all of you like this story, so please do like, share, subscribe and comment on our channel. Thanks for listening and wait for the next part.